Hey guys, we did it. We really did it. We've invented a truth machine. So philosophy, yeah, that's over. Nothing left to think about. The machine will take it from here.
Kalshi is a truth machine, and that this is like a necessary service to kind of expose the truth about the world.
The only source of truth that people had about the fact that Donald Trump indeed had 63% chance of winning, and actually the market odds were the only source of truth.
The same apps on which you can bet about the likelihood of Christ's return, or I don't know how likely Russell Westbrook is to keep his triple-double streak going at the ripe old age of 37, those same apps will now reshape democracy and knowledge via their mechanisms of truth-finding.
We're letting the market speak instead of pundits, pollsters. Markets don't lie.
And you're likely already aware of the boom of prediction market apps, which are sort of like sports gambling apps, but for everything. The two most well-known of these apps are Polymarket and Kalshi, which are collectively valued at around $30 billion. Now, Kalshi is named after the Arabic word for everything, as in the words of CEO Tarek Mansour, his app is literally aimed at turning anything and everything into a tradable asset. The goal is for differences of opinion to become financial products.
Could you financialize in anything that people care about? And Kalshi is everything in Arabic. The long-term vision is to financialize everything and create a tradable asset out of any difference in opinion.
And along the way, you get to make a little money betting on things like college basketball, political coups, and Iranian bombings. Now, there's already been a lot of talk about the sports gambling epidemic that's affecting young men. And we've seen the proliferation of sports gambling change how we experience our relationship to our favorite teams, with gambling apps sponsoring sports networks and podcasts, and commentators using financial odds as the primary way in which they analyze sports.
If you bet, should do it, meaning score the 18 points and pass Pistol Pete in the second quarter, you have to wager $185 to win 100 if you're a gambler, either. And you hope she starts very fast or very slow, you can win $1,600 on a $100 bet if you think she'll score 18 in the first quarter.
Which for some of us has been annoying as hell. But when those same apps are being used to make money off, betting on the outcome of an attempted coup in Venezuela, or the date that Iran is going to shoot missiles at Israel, a whole other thing is happening, and the implications are, they're not great. The implications on this one, not great, Bob. Now, this isn't just concerning because people might become addicted to gambling on everything, though of course that would be bad, but because the rise of prediction market apps and their underlying financial logic are fundamentally reorienting the way that we view political reality and even truth itself. We're already seeing Kalshi odds being integrated into news coverage on CNN, implying that the prediction market odds on potential nuclear war have as much journalistic validity as the DraftKings odds for Draymond Green sinking a three-pointer for the first basket of a Warriors-Lakers game. Shout out Draymond. Fuck the Lakers. And the sports overlap isn't incidental here. NBA star Devin Booker has partnered with Kalshi, and Chick-fil-A enthusiast Giannis Antetokounmpo is an investor.
You gotta say with a D, so it's Antetokounmpo. But in the Greek way, you say with the NT, like Antetokounmpo.
Now, this is creating the conditions for a large-scale manufacturing of consent for all types of political and military projects. Whether it's Polymarket deciding in advance that the 2028 general election will be between J.D. Vance and Gavin Newsom, or Kalshi informing us that we were probably bombing Iran anyway, so we might as well just go with it when it happens. It's inevitable. It's inevitable, so you better just go with it. Prediction markets are quite literally reshaping the way we think about political possibility, turning it from something abstract into something objective.
If we bring more objectivity and more truth to how we think about the future, I think people will make better decisions.
In a recent essay, economist Kyla Scanlon writes that when large traders move markets and those movements are reported as consensus, what you're actually seeing is capital-weighted bets from whoever has the most information, insider or not. But those bets get laundered into legitimacy through the language of collective wisdom and truth machines, with a light touch of regulation. While they might not literally be producing truth, these markets are producing the semblance of truth, which, to be clear, is their stated aim.
People will start going to these markets to find an unbiased sort of source of truth.
And when these markets are integrated into our trusted news sources, well, boy, oh boy, are we cooked. So today, let's try to understand the logic underneath these truth machines, talk about how they're already changing the way we see the world, and ask if there is any possibility of collectively resisting this system of digital financialization. Hint, there actually might be. So stick around for that part. In case you're worried this is going to be a hopeless one, it's not. So in the middle of the video, if you're like, I don't know if I want to stick around for this, maybe stick around. Now, one of the other negative side effects of our digitized, financialized, always-on hustle culture is that it's gotten a lot harder to sleep. You know, whether you're in bed doom scrolling or just worrying about money that you didn't make, which is why I'm really excited about this video sponsor, Manta Sleep. Now, true story, I have been using sleep masks from Manta Sleep for years, long before they ever reached out about sponsoring the channel, which is why I was so excited when they did reach out. Not only because I'm excited to share that with you, but also because they sent me some fun new stuff. Now, I genuinely love the sleep mask that Manta Sleep makes. These things are comfortable, they're easy to clean. They've really changed the quality of my sleep. I'll show you how easy they are to put on. You just do that, we adjust, we find our perfect size. Oh yeah, this is the silk one right here. It feels very classy, it's very light and comfortable. Oh yeah, that's the stuff. And as we get closer to summer, I'm gonna start using my Manta Cool Sleep Mask a lot. This one has pads on the inside. They keep my eyes cool. Oh, they're good for your sinuses. I mean, my God, look at that thing. Oh, that feels good. So if you've never tried a sleep mask before, please click the link in the description, use the code BURNS, and you are gonna get 10% off your own Manta Sleep Mask. These masks are super comfortable, they're easy to clean. I genuinely could not sleep without one of these days, so click the link, use the code BURNS, get one for yourself, let me know how it goes. Now I'm gonna get some rest before getting back to the video. To understand why people are making money betting on war and the return of Christ, we first need to understand the logic of sports betting, which paved the way for the era of Kalshi and Polymarket, both of which notably feature sports betting as well. It's actually one of the biggest things they do over there. The rise in popularity of prediction markets follows on the heels of the explosion of legal sports betting apps like DraftKings and FanDuel. Now, this era of sports betting became possible through a 2018 Supreme Court ruling, which allowed individual states to regulate licenses and thereby collect tax revenue. Since then, you can't watch a game without being inundated with ads, both for the apps themselves, but also for specific bets, which are pushed and sponsored by media personalities during pregame, in-game, and halftime shows, as well as an entire ecosystem of podcast and social media content that are all about gambling, sponsored by gambling companies. It's like sports is only gambling now, and gambling, oh, it sucks. I don't like it. Now, for many fans, the interwoven nature of sports betting apps with the leagues themselves has raised ethical questions, as major scandals have emerged in the NBA, MLB, and college basketball. The pervasiveness of sports betting content and the way it dominates over other forms of sports media also significantly diminishes the experience for fans who prefer not to bet, like me. I like sports, but I don't like to bet on sports. We exist. Now, we see this in the abstracted logic used by fans who gamble on the games, as their viewing interest gets contorted to what they bet on rather than just rooting for a favorite team or player or an exciting game. This ecosystem is reinforced when fans lash out at players when they cost them money after a bad wager. In other words, the actual humans playing the games and the attached sense of drama matters far less than the abstracted numbers being produced by the game, which then directly correlates to tradable financial assets.
I mean, shoot, ever since sports betting started happening, I get people telling me to kill myself every week. And, you know, because I'll hit a kick that loses them money. I'll miss a kick and it loses them money. It was the other day somebody told me to get cancer and die.
Now, while prediction markets have a lot in common with more traditional sports betting apps, the differences are that prediction markets have the aspiration for this logic to be applicable to any phenomenon in society where people can be enticed to bet. The prediction markets also have way more potential to determine the outcome of events, but we'll talk about that more a little later. Now, one of their key differences is that in traditional sports gambling, you're always betting against the house, whereas on prediction market apps, you're wagering directly against those who are predicting no when you predict yes. It's more of a peer-to-peer model without the mediation or interference of a house. Prediction market apps are also less regulated than sports betting apps, which makes them more widely available. This makes them increasingly popular places for sports betting to happen. They also allow you to gamble on all sorts of specific and sometimes obscure aspects of sporting events. Shout out all the streakers. Now, the main thing to note here is that the prediction market apps have taken that same ability to bet on almost any aspect of a sporting event and then applied it to society and culture as a whole, which means you can now make money betting on when the US will send troops into Iran, whether the US will confirm the existence of aliens by a particular date, or most urgently, if President Trump will say gay this week. Will he or won't he? You can go bet on that right now. You really can. And these prediction markets have the ability to create new political and social possibilities and even realities. You know, whether it's telling us who's going to win the 2028 election or how many views Mr. Beast will have on his next video. Now, this creates consensus for a yet to be determined future. But differently, it reshapes how we're able to imagine the future, as possibility itself now feels shaped and limited by the odds given to us by prediction markets. And it's only further solidified when networks that were once engaged in something called journalism also use those odds to report the news. Because it's one thing when a market responds to events that are happening or have already happened for the sake of profit. It's another thing altogether when the markets are basically like, hey guys, what if this happened? And then create financial incentives and motives for those future events to happen. You know, these new markets don't just predict, they preordain. And this seemingly spiritual power is increasingly concentrated in the hands of capital. It's also doing a thing where journalists are getting death threats if what they report doesn't work for the bets. It's not, I don't love it. I don't love it. In case you were wondering at this point in the video, does he love it? He doesn't love it. Okay, I imagine there's a few of you who have already been yelling at the screen wondering why the hell I haven't used the word financialization yet. And that's because I'm doing it now, so let's just chill, okay? Let me build a little narrative tension here. We're all on the same team. We're all on the same team. Now, according to political economist Jack Copley, financialization refers to the growing size and importance of financial markets in global capitalism since the 1970s. Credit bubbles have inflated, colossal banking institutions have swallowed up smaller ones, and complex financial instruments have proliferated. Many industrial corporations have also become financialized, earning increasing revenues from financial ventures and reinvesting them in short-term schemes to boost share prices. Everyday life, too, has been transfigured. We are increasingly pressured to approach our lives like balance sheets, making prudent investments, managing risk, and acquiring financial assets, chiefly housing, to insulate ourselves against economic uncertainty. This is a system in which the logic of finance has become the primary shaper of social, political, and yes, even cultural life. You might think of something like enshittification as a direct outflow of the logic of financialization, in as much as apps and platforms don't primarily serve human interest anymore, but rather they serve the logic of finance. The goal isn't the people, the goal is the numbers, on the board, is the finance numbers, the money, all that money, the money is the motive. I can't not quote The Weeknd. To use politics as an example here, think about the promise of a more classical liberal democracy in which our political agency is wielded through the power of our vote. Now, in the era of financialization, we still, of course, have the right to vote, but we're all pretty aware that the real hand turning the lever of power is the logic of finance, as candidates are only viable if they're able to raise millions of dollars just to run a campaign. This means that while, yes, we do get to vote still, we're only able to vote for candidates that are already deemed financially viable by various market forces. Now, let's say someone good does sneak through the system, right? They then have to contend with attempting to wield power in a political system that's largely been hollowed out by financialization and the increasing power of Silicon Valley. You know, it's like even if a good one's there, what are they gonna do? I don't know. Shout out to John Fetterman. Oh, John. Speaking of Silicon Valley, the whole political game gets further undermined by apps like Kalshi and Polymarket, which are explicit in their aims to both reshape democracy while also turning political opinion into a tradable asset.
It actually enhances democracy in a way.
Now, in the context of financialization, this seems like common sense. Things have value only inasmuch as they are tradable assets, which means that the idea of things like public goods with no market value, you know, stuff like social housing, nationalized healthcare, things of that nature, simply don't make sense under this logic. So say goodbye to the library. You know, say goodbye to the library. I'll be conspiratorial for a second. I'm gonna start. They'll start shutting those down soon. I bet there's Polymarket odds for when they'll kill the library. That'll be good. That'll be real good. That'll be real good. Oh, also the guy that runs Kalshi said he doesn't read books. So there's that. If you want to look at that clip, the guy that runs Kalshi says that he doesn't read books. He just looks at TikTok all day. And that's the guy that built the machine that's going to redo truth. That's the guy.
I can't read.
Now, what I'm about to say is not a perfect analogy, but it makes me think of how with the shift from neoliberalism to financialization, the billionaire class has actually gotten even more evil. Because while people like Bill Gates and George Soros are obviously not cool guys or comrades, like they're not good, they're bad guys. They're bad guys in the story. They still viewed things like starting nonprofits and supporting humanitarian causes a sort of thing one does when they become rich as fuck. Now compare this to the new generation of billionaires who are putting all of their money into markets and technologies that aim to further devalue and exploit human life while using what might have formerly been their humanitarian sin tax money to build escape rockets and apocalypse bunkers for them and their weird little friends. Like they don't even act anymore. I'm not, just to be clear, in case anyone's about to say like, wow, Michael, you think some billionaires are good? No, they're all bad. But there used to be an era of the billionaire where they kind of had to be like, we gotta let people live though. We should do the bare minimum to make sure the workers stay alive. We should keep them alive. And the new era of billionaires are like, I don't care. Who cares? If they die, they die. AI will pay AI for AI. And then we'll take the money from those transactions and go to our New Zealand bunkers or something. Guys, the world is not, it's not the best. Now, under a financialized economy, they don't even need to pretend like they have a concern for working people. While at the same time, they've gotten really good at utilizing the uncertainty and anxiety created by this dehumanizing financial logic to fuel populism and nationalism. And this all plays right into the hustle culture logic that fuels the world of the prediction market bros and a manosphere ecosystem that largely exists to convince depressed young men that if they just learn the right hacks and tools, they can transcend the broken economic system and have the independent wealth and cheekbones that will make them truly free.
You can actually get college loans and use it for surgery. So this is a method. So I've been telling people, yeah, you can literally do that. So just misappropriating the funds, it's really not going to get you in that much trouble, and you'll mog, so you'll be able to sort of get out of it.
And this has led many to analyze Gen Z's love of prediction markets as being indicative of a certain sort of financial recklessness, you know, applying sports betting logic to their larger financial futures. But as Scanlon sees it, it's less an issue of Gen Z treating finance like a game and more about a type of financial nihilism that's a product of the shift to a fully financialized economy. Writing about the dominance of prediction market ads and content, Scanlon says that Gen Z is the target audience for a lot of these ads, and according to the surveys, they're numb, depressed, addicted to gambling, antisocial, and demoralized. And of course they are, with attention stretched so thin and incentives so misaligned. When the latter feels fake, people stop climbing and start hacking. The latter, in this case, is the lingering logic of neoliberalism that perpetuates a myth in which the market rewards hard work and industriousness with wealth and success. The realization that this is an empty myth is what's turned a generation into financial nihilists, attempting to bet and hack their ways to some sort of individual freedom. And as Scanlon writes, young adults aren't confused or bamboozled by the risks they're taking. They understand them. They're responding to an economy where the usual advice no longer lines up clearly with outcomes. This response has created a world in which the logic of market speculation has started to shape the thinking of individuals simply trying to survive within the system. If the whole system operates via the logic of finance now, well, the options are basically trade or die. Scanlon describes it like this, writing, "Speculation is things will be better when my bet hits, and vote for burn it down, accelerate, and check portfolio obsessively or post-obsessively, and feel briefly like you have agency, and then reality returns. Still can't afford rent." She goes on to write, "Speculation offers a sense of agency without real control." To put this in more philosophical terms, we're seeing a new ontology emerge, one that's wholly driven by the logic of finance. We can think of this as a financial ontology, in which that which is real, which truly exists, is only that which can be conceived as a tradable financial asset. This leads to an equally financial form of epistemology, or the theory of knowledge, in which only that which can be financially quantified can be truly known.
This truth concept that I think makes these markets so important. They're not kind of the ultimate truth, but I think they're as close as it gets.
And in this world, the claims made by the CEOs of the prediction market apps might be correct, as, they really are producing truth and reshaping democracy and society. But hey, at least now you can make monies off bombs and shit. So that's cool. And hey, before I keep going, I did want to let you know that I'll have a part 2 of this video up on Patreon in a week. It's a new thing I'm doing where for my bigger videos, I'm going to look at the comments and read the responses and do a follow-up video where I dive into the material a little bit more, respond to your questions and critiques, and just think through things with a little more depth. It's a way for us to sort of have a conversation about this stuff. So check Patreon in a week if you're already on there. If you're not, and that's something you're interested in, there's the thing below. You click it, you go, you do the thing, and I'll see you there. Okay, so at this point, this all sounds pretty bad. The idea that financial logic has become a sort of epistemic and ontological source of truth and meaning is at direct odds with any societal logic that would prioritize humanity and community on its own basis. And one reasonable response to this might be, we just gotta burn this whole shit to the ground and start over. And listen, at a visceral level, I get it. I really do. But according to some, the move might actually be to use the logic of this system to expose the contradictions in the system itself and create the space for a type of rehumanization and communization of humanity. That's at least according to Aris Kamparazos Athanasiou, who in his book Speculative Communities, Living with Uncertainty in a Financialized World, takes a quasi-existential approach to how the speculative logic of finance has radically changed the entire nature of human community and politics. And at the root of this change is an ontology of uncertainty, similar to the type of fundamental uncertainty about reality that philosophers like Kierkegaard and Sartre associated with a potential collapse into anxiety and despair. Now, the contemporary response to this has been the emergence of what Kamparazos Athanasiou calls speculative communities, groups of individuals forming over some sort of shared response to the underlying uncertainty of a financialized world. Now, as he makes clear in his book, many of these communities are bad. They're not the best. Take the manosphere. While it's easy to simply say that these communities are grounded in nothing more than misogyny and individualism and hate, when we look deeper, many of those who fall into this logic are initially motivated by the uncertainty of financial reality.
We're born to just accept what society gives to you. And what he promotes is saying that, no, you have to refuse it. Refuse that and you accomplish your own goals. I'm going to help my mother. I'm going to give generations of wealth to my kids, to my mother, to everybody else, and there's nothing that can hold me back.
And no 9-to-5 job is going to be able
Exactly.
to give you that. So that's the matrix.
That's the matrix, the job.
But once we get past the hustler's university of it all, it's clear that the promise of neoliberal rationality, go to school, work hard, get a job, buy a home, has proven false for many, if not most of the people in a generation. In a world where that playing by traditional economic logic isn't going to get you a house or generational wealth, many just turn towards the logic of speculation to try to create a new reality for themselves. Put differently, they bet it all on an uncertain future. Now, it's important to note that this speculative logic isn't just coming from the financialization of markets. It's being transmitted via the financialization of a majority of the digital technologies and platforms that mediate our modern existence. In other words, the shrinking gap between fantasy and reality fuels a type of speculative imagination. TikTok videos of fellow hustlers out there grinding and getting it being fed to you 24/7 creates the illusion of proximity between where you are and that image, that place where you want to be. And TikTok videos and reels of activists screaming at you about what really matters, well, they still operate with such an intensity that the digital content feels like a form of real political praxis. It feels immediate. It's not, though. It's still just content on a financialized application. Something similar is happening in the rise of populist and nationalist political movements. Both react to the uncertainty of political and economic reality with an appeal to some sort of foundational myth that provides certainty and a sense of insurance against the unknown. This also really makes sense of the pipeline between the manosphere and right-wing populism, as both are offering responses to that existential economic and political uncertainty. According to Comparazos Athanasiou, the financialization of everything that apps like Kalshi are aiming to create is transforming the very nature of our human subjectivity. Now, in a previous era, humans were understood as Homo economicus, rational agents driven by the logic of neoliberalism. For many, this meant growing up in a world where you understood that if you simply followed the rational logic of the market, you could guarantee yourself some level of success in life, and you could rationally determine that future for yourself.
How can I get the most out of my personal savings?
3 super-powered ways.
Kabam!
Set savings goals. Shop for an account. And save regularly.
But as that logic collapses and uncertainty seeps through the cracks, humans become better understood as Homo speculans, driven not by rationality, but the imagination. Comparazos Athanasiou also makes it clear that he draws a distinction between Homo speculans and the figure of the gambler, as to imagine and speculate are not the same thing as gambling. Just in case, you can read more about it if you want, but I figured I'll let you know. We can understand the rise of Homo speculans, or the speculative human, against the backdrop of the escalating tensions between ongoing financialization and the failed promises of neoliberal reason. As we're seeing, the speculative dynamics of finance seem to be triumphing over neoliberal reason. So while it once made sense to play the game and follow the rules, now it makes more sense to risk it all on speculation and hopes of hacking the system and getting your one big payout. This also creates an environment where it's politically advantageous to generate chaos via misinformation and conspiracy for the sake of destabilizing stuff and acquiring and keeping power for yourself. Comparazos Athanasiou calls all of this speculative politics. Now, this concept helps describe a political system where the world of finance increasingly wields more power than elected politicians, let alone the voting public. But Comparazos Athanasiou also describes the emergence of a type of grassroots speculative politics with the express aim of weaponizing existing political volatility in order to counter dominant structures within financialized capitalism. Now, he calls this counter-speculation, and it's a way of using the speculative logic of finance against the project of financialization and increasing populism. Comparazos Athanasiou argues that dominant social media networks, which he calls speculative technologies, create a new society of the spectacle, in which the 24/7 nature of modern digital image production creates new types of social relations and forms a new way of thinking about future possibilities, what he refers to as capitalist imaginaries. Now, this imaginary is one in which the digital fantasy becomes reality, and the logic of finance shapes our mode of social relations, so that even our attempts to express political outrage follow the logic of the digital spectacle. And again, this is all happening in response to an underlying sense of future uncertainty and anxiety. But rather than simply resisting this logic, Komparazos Athanasiou gives examples of counter-speculative political activity that plays speculation against itself. Like the teens that organized on TikTok to reserve seats for a 2020 Trump rally with the express aim of never showing up. They ended up leaving a venue of 19,000 with only 6,200 actual attendees, even though the event seemed like it was going to be sold out, and I guess that's what Trump was expecting. He didn't win in 2020, so maybe it worked. Komparazos Athanasiou writes that this type of activism doesn't aim at revealing their target's evils, a strategy typically favored by the whistleblower activism tradition. Rather, it sought to drown and muddle their opponent's messages. These actions take advantage of the ephemeral nature of this reality, embracing a disorienting present with the aim of reorienting the political field in favor of the marginalized and the invisible. While the speculative politics fueling the prediction market boom emphasizes the individual gaming the system and making 3 months' rent with a single bet, counter-speculation works from within the spectacle to articulate a vision of future possibility that's oriented around community and collective action. In a way that mirrors classical existentialism, counter-speculation is a call to embrace the uncertainty of the system as a source of possibility for imagining that things could be otherwise. And rather than acting out of a sense of survival, it's acting more out of a sense of collective resistance and imagination. Komparazos Athanasiou writes that counter-speculations offer a much-needed political grammar for progressive engagements with uncertainty in the service of more democratic collectives, at the same time mounting a challenge against the more regressive speculative politics currently on the march. Okay, I know this is all getting a bit heady. I'm just starting to wrap my head around all of this myself. But one of the core ideas here is that the financialization of reality has been reshaping our sense of imagination, limiting it in ways we might not even realize, and in ways which exist within the boundaries of the logic of speculative finance. It's kind of putting limits on our imagination. So when Silicon Valley thought leaders and prediction market gurus and politicians are all pushing the inevitability of a financialized future on us, we can start to unconsciously work within those limits. And in doing so, we're falling into a logic of individual wins over collective emancipation. So rather than letting the logic of speculation control our political imagination, the logic of counter-speculation stares at the uncertainty of an unknown future and says, fuck it, we ball. The we being the operative term there, to be clear. Because at the end of the day, we have nothing to lose but the $2,000 that we bet on Jesus coming back by the end of 2026. Okay, to keep it real with you all, the world of financial theory is definitely newer to me, and I'm in the middle of reading lots of stuff right now in an attempt to figure it out and understand it philosophically. So I'm going to be talking about this stuff in upcoming videos, and I'm down for any and all reading recommendations that you guys might have. Also, Anna Bocca has been doing a great series of videos on this topic, so please check out her work that's here on YouTube. If you've not already, I'll put a link to her channel in the description. But one thing I'm confident in is that as the dominance of neoliberal logic is taken over by the speculative logic of finance, we're going to have to be willing to revisit and rethink some of the philosophical and theoretical critiques of capitalism that focused on neoliberalism as the contemporary iteration of capitalism. This means a reevaluation of things like political subjectivity, democratic organizing, and the use of the imagination in light of the shift from neoliberalism to financialization. Because the weapons built to fight neoliberalism might not be the most effective in the war against financialization. Now, there's a whole aspect of the logic of contemporary financialization that I haven't even mentioned yet, which is its dominance and increasing devastation of art and media and popular culture. So my big video next month is going to continue this conversation by looking at how the logic of finance has been quietly ruining the world of culture and art and all things human. So look out for that one next month. And in the meantime, please subscribe if you don't already, as it really helps the channel out. And leave some comments if you have follow-ups or questions, as next week I'll be recording and posting a part 2 to this video over on Patreon, where I respond to comments and explore some of these themes further. Joining my Patreon is also the only way to join my Burns Theory learning community, where we're having regular lectures by both myself and visiting academics. I'm doing office hours. And we have a Discord server now that you can hang out in and try to think in a more human manner, even though you're still on computer. There's a link below and you can check all of that out. In the meantime, I'm going to go check the Polymarket odds on my wife leaving me for a mysterious French tennis instructor by the end of the year. That's not good at all. Je suis scared.
I can't read.